Welcome to Practical Privacy. Today we're going to discuss the challenge of retrofitting a mapping and RoPA process into an existing privacy program. And we have Dave Evans, Group DPO of Domus, with us to discuss his journey. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Thank you for joining us. So let's start with some background, Dave. What was the environment like when this challenge arose?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm assuming that most of us have experienced this challenge, whether it was from starting the RoPA up from scratch or looking at it and going, how can it be more mature? Or in my case, I came to Domus, which is we're a financial services company. We manage alternative assets. I came in and I was faced with a paper RoPA, which wasn't the best and it wasn't the worst, but it was already getting unwieldy. It was already complicated. And I had this sense initially that I wanted to understand more whether we'd even capture the right data. So the challenge was I was walking in and trying to go, okay, we got a privacy program, it's working, everybody's happy. How do I make this particular document better?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I've heard it again and again, the dreaded Excel RoPA. So I've no doubt you tried many things. So what approaches did you try early on that didn't quite work?
Well, I mean, the first thing we tried, and I think this was we started right off the bat making a mistake. The first thing we tried was let's go jump out there and buy some big expensive piece of solution, right? Whatever that is, whatever that we don't necessarily understand, but we just know it's going to do the great thing and fix these problems that we have.
Yeah.
And so we had this paper document, we had a software solution that was quite unwieldy and potentially bigger than what we needed for the size of our company. And we were honestly trying to do e-discovery when we had everything we already needed in the RoPA. We knew what we needed, but we should have trusted the document. We should have asked some different questions,
Yeah.
and instead we just jumped right into no, let's go spend a bunch of money and put in a big solution.
So you kind of went for overkill, let's say.
Well, I don't know that we knew it was overkill at the time, and I think the reason was we didn't ask the right questions before we even started. We should have gone back and really asked, well, what do we use the RoPA for anyway? What do we need? Why do we need it? I mean, the simple answer is because we're required to have one by GDPR and other privacy regulations, and that it's a compliance solution. But a compliance solution is never just a compliance solution. It's a solution because you need it for something. And so
Yeah.
that's where things started to change for us a little bit as we were struggling to put it in place, and we were still struggling to answer the same questions from our clients or the same questions from our employees about personal data. So, we were kind of faced with something that it may have been a great solution. I'm not gonna say that it wasn't a great solution. It just didn't give us the right answer because we weren't asking the right questions.
Yeah. But I think that's the old question, isn't it? It's like there is no one size fits all out there. It's about what is the right solution for you and your situation.
Absolutely. And I think I can't reiterate enough that it was about when I look back and I think about like what could we have done better, and I know that's an easy question in hindsight. It's like you got to know what question you're asking. You got to know what you're going to use the thing for. And GDPR is just not a prescriptive. I'll take that for example. It's not a prescriptive statute that's just there to make you do a bunch of stuff for no reason. There's a reason for every article.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just about understanding the why. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what finally did work then?
Well, we kind of came to an understanding at one point that we were all struggling, and I don't have a big team. So, we face a lot of questions, and we ended up spending a lot of time using multiple documents. We had the new solution, and we were still going back to the old paper RoPA, like for answers sometimes.
Yeah.
And we realized that what we needed to do is we needed to re-examine our purpose for having it and what we really wanted to do with it, and then kind of get a system from there. If we even needed a system, because it might have been that the RoPA itself was appropriate. Obviously, paper RoPAs just can't scale, and you never cease growing. So you're always eventually going to grow out of that system unless you're kind of a bit stagnant or you don't have a lot of personal data. And just at the same time, I happened to meet somebody with TrustWorks of all places. I mean, I meet people in my professional capacity all the time, but we were talking about about data, and the more that I talked with TrustWorks, the more I was like, okay, I think I have a solution that actually addresses the specific questions I'm going to ask. So let me explore that a little more. So we did that. We went in and we basically retrofitted, uploaded our existing RoPA into a solution that took it, right? So it didn't change it. I didn't have to do a lot of awkward rediscovery.
Mhm.
And then we used that to then, rather than start all over again, we were just making what we had already done more mature and more scalable and easier to use and easier to get an answer from. Once we had taken that approach, suddenly we found that we had all these other questions we could ask, because now we could do analytics. Now, for example, just recently somebody said, well, do we have any duplicate systems that process, you know, the same data the same way that we're spending money on both? And I was able to go, oh yeah, let's go look at our assets in here, and
Yeah.
I can see that I've got two systems that, you know what I mean? It's had multiple purposes, or multiple results. And it's also helped us kind of align, I think, across the wider business with, we have gone through a whole process management exercise through the company. And so we were actually able to align that with the ROPA so that it's very clear, and I have a very
Okay.
high level of comfort that what is in my ROPA is actually what people are doing. And honestly, it all goes back to being able to import that paper ROPA, which was a good starting place.
Yeah, because a lot of work had been done, so having to start all over again would not make sense either.
And we did find things that were like, initially, very initially, we were concerned that we might be missing something. Everybody's got that fear of, not fear of missing out, fear of missing something that's important. And starting from scratch was not the right idea, but actually using the REPL, we were able not only to do it quickly, but we found that we had a lot easier time than making it more mature and diving down into specifics and explaining it to the business, which is always important. Like, why are you making me do this? We could explain it to them and show them and help them and work with them kind of collaboratively to have a really complete record of processing activities.
Which is the dream.
Yeah. And when a client asks me now, and it happens probably at least bi-weekly, um, what processing activities are you doing for me, and where is data stored, and what kinds of data do you have? I can go find it really easily. I can almost cut and paste it out of one thing and put it in the email, and I have confidence, and they have confidence.
So if you could go back and start again, what would you do differently?
I'd ask the question first, and rather than just jump right into, I want the nice shiny thing that is really fantastic, it's going to do it all for me, I would have gone back and said, what do I actually want this for? Like, what am I doing? What is the purpose of a ROPA? Maybe that's the best thing to say. Purpose of ROPA is not just to comply with GDPR. It is actually to be able to demonstrate that you know what you're processing and where you're processing it, and the types of data, and that you can have some certainty in what you're doing. And I, I would have gone back and asked those questions first, and I might have gone down a different path to start with.
Yeah, no, that's great hindsight, actually. And finally, if you could offer one piece of advice to your peers, what would it be?
Um, I wouldn't be afraid of enhancing what you have rather than going back and starting from scratch. I think most of us have been working with, at least anybody who works in GDPR, we've been doing this for so long,
Mm,
that we have tools that sometimes are unwieldy, right? And probably unwieldy because we've jumped into them too quickly to adopt a tool to make sure that we're compliant, when in fact I think asking the question about what am I going to use it for, what am I going to do with it, what's important about it is the most important thing.
yeah, 100%. And as we said, there is no one size fits all. It's important to understand what you're looking for and find the right solution for you.
Well, absolutely, because there's multiple solutions. We found, I mean, honestly, we found the TrustWorks solution because it was the right size for our operations, and it was at a point where it would scale with us appropriately. Um, there's a lot of things out there, some of which are way better if you're a Fortune 500 gigantic company with hundreds of thousands of employees and hundreds of thousands of data subjects, doing B2C. We're doing B2B. We had different requirements, and I guess you got to think about where you are in that journey too, and not don't overdo what it is you need. Like focus on, again, the solution.
100%. Fantastic takeaways, Dave. Thank you very much for sharing your journey. I have no doubt this will resonate with many data protection teams. And that's a wrap for today. So if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share. Until next time.